Sorry, can you mute your mic? Guys, please mute your mic. Whoever's switched on. Zabib, mute your mic.
Sorry.
Zabib, mute your mic.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Lual. Yeah, go ahead.
So, of course, you have mentioned the agriculture, the way late John Garang used to view it is to make agriculture the engine of our economy and then use the oil to fuel it. He has other ideas of taking town to the people in the rural areas. These two ideas complement each other. Now, I got appointed to the chairmanship of the board of directors of the Agriculture Bank of South Sudan in January this year, and recommended the board, the new board, and to the Minister of Finance, and a new board was constituted in February this year. And we have just started to look at some of the documents what need to be done. The bank has been, it was of course part of the Bank of Sudan, Agriculture Bank of Sudan, and it was now reconstituted as Agriculture Bank of South Sudan in 2013. And the first chairperson of the board was late Professor Maria Rawu, God bless his soul. And I'm the second chairman of the board of directors. And my approach has been in the last two months, and I have John McCoy here in Rumbek. I think our team should have arrived today. They left yesterday. They are touring the Greater Bargazal to look at talking to the farmers how we could implement some of the ideas and establishing rural agro-mechanical centers where we can hire out tractors to farmers and they can pay us back in kind at the harvest if they don't have cash. We are avoiding the approach in the past which has been used. There are several, I think thousands of tractors have been brought, they were given out. They are laying in ruin in many places. And we say, no, this is not the way to, if we are agriculture bank, it is a bank, a bank has to at least make some cost recovery if we not make money. Otherwise, there's no need to Minister of Agriculture or the government to distribute tractors just freely. So we approach this to create what we call community, public, private partnership, and where we have been encouraging farming communities to be in the cooperative forms, or even if they don't, they have to share a tractor if they want to buy it, if they want to get services, or there are places to be cultivated. We have to try to group them, and we are encouraging some of the traditional smallholders who are currently cultivating 1 fadan per family. We want to encourage them to have 5 fadans per family and group them together so that we have what we call these rural agro-mechanical centers. There'll be about 5 tractors and a workshop and extension services and marketing. And so you will have about 10,000 fadans. And then you can divide that 10,000 by 5. How many families will you have? And near them, we'll encourage some entrepreneurs like John Michael mentioned before. He's a farmer. He's the head of farmer who said, okay, you can be near this group, maybe between 40 up to 1,000 fadans. You'll be able to do it as individual farmer for commercial purposes. And that near to that, we are encouraging the military to begin also to food. We are saying this part, the second liberation is against hunger. So take hunger like an enemy to be fought. So we are encouraging them, each division of our military, to have what we call food security battalion, and to be able to fight. So near them, we will put about 5,000 fadans for the army to cultivate. And this year we are targeting for each state, because the rainy season will come, and we just started. We had about 120 something tractors. They have a case on them, have been sitting there for a year, not being used. We just won the case now. They will be given to us. And we are going to make use of these 100 tractors by starting encouraging, start with 2 centers for each of the 10 states, plus the 3 administrative areas. So this is what we want to, and it is, and when you read the large document, I wanted really to focus on the land. So arable land is 75% of our land, but the land which can be cultivated without much ado is about 330,000 square kilometers, or 78.6 million fedans. And what is being used now, except rank, where you have mechanized agriculture, is very limited. We have 4% of that cultivable land being used, and yet the country is facing food insecurity, and depending on humanitarian supplies. Okay, one can argue that there are areas of insecurity, but there are areas of relative security in the country, and so we said we are targeting those areas where we have relative security, and to encourage what I have just mentioned, the communities, the farmers, small farmers, who will be helping them with inputs, and what we have done a quick assessment. We are finding some difficulties for them. The fuel, for instance, seeds, question of marketing, all those things. And this is what we have been targeting. We will be targeting them, and they don't need to pay now. We sign agreement with them. We're buying, we are encouraging sorghum. To some extent, we will be introducing wheat for the first time. We are looking at shukudum. Rice is not just in a will. People are now in Juba, around Juba, they are cultivating rice. So we are targeting about 8 commodities, agricultural products, and we hope in 2 years' time, 2 seasons, to agricultural season, we should really be self-sufficient. And the 3rd year, we should be able to export. And as Manon, I think, if I remember him well, I think it was Manon who mentioned that we have been mentioned several times, we can be the breadbasket of Africa, and that one is achievable. Within a decade, we can achieve that. And it requires your generation, and really the most important, as far as I'm concerned, and my apologies if you feel offended, is managing things well, managing resources, including time. You have to managing time very well. Thank you very much. I was hoping that I would be listening to some of your reactions, but unfortunately I have to catch up. The plane cannot wait for me. I have waited for you, but the plane cannot wait for me, so I will rush, and my apologies. I maybe give you 2 minutes if you want to respond. I can do that.
Thank you, Doctor. We're really thankful for your time, and again we apologize that we took a bit of time to start. I think we can open the floor if anybody ask the doctor. We're so grateful for his contribution here.
You are echoing. Something is wrong with your headset, I guess.
Go ahead, James.
I also hear the echo.
Yeah, go ahead, James.
Yeah. No, I was saying you were echoing.
Oh, okay.
In the meeting from Valmont Corporation in Nebraska, one of the largest irrigation companies. And we have developed also a tank to bring $100 million to $200 from U.S. Finance. And so we would love to have all of you join some of these think tanks if you're interested in the agricultural sector. So I'll be quiet. More to say about that.
Okay, we just want to ask Dr. Lual one or two questions before he goes. Really, so could we? Does anybody want to ask a question or just acknowledge him? Yeah, John.
Okay, thank you very much. All the luck. Good luck.
I think John's having an issue. I think Dr. Lual, we salute you for all that you plan to do. I don't know if you're still here. I can't see you.
Justin.
Yes.
My suggestion is, as long as he doesn't have time, I think we need more time with him. If he's coming to New York, why can't we ask him if he can be available next week?
Definitely.
Because we need him to have enough time, and we can benefit from, because those are the people actually who are in charge of what can make a difference in South Sudan.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
I totally
Okay,
agree.
we'll ask him to if he has any time next week. Yeah.
So, sorry to interrupt, Justin. I think you're logged on your laptop and your phone as well.
Yeah. I don't want what happened earlier to happen again. Can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you, but the echo is still there. That's because the two accounts you need to mute one of them.
I've reclaimed the host here. But I don't know if you can hear me from here. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
We can. The problem isn't not hearing you. The problem is the echoing.
Yeah. So I think I've resolved it now. Yeah.
You have.
I take another risk because the other time it locked us out. Yeah. So I hear you, Manon. I think it's justifiable. It's just sometimes to coordinate and get everybody on here on time, it becomes a problem. Some of our speakers even have not joined because of network issues. Yeah, but let's proceed. So I think we can go on to James Manasseh to give us his input here today. We will definitely we heed to the advice, and we'll try and call Dr. Lual tomorrow when he lands to see, or on Monday, to see if he'll have time for us. Yeah.
Hey, Nyieer, the other speaker is not here. If they are there,
so you could go next. They will probably join us. Yeah, you could go next for now. Yeah.
Okay. Just give me 1 second.
Anybody else who wants to have a crack at the subject, particularly John McCoy? We would like to hear your experiences and knowledge on.
Yeah, let them go ahead.
Agriculture.
If
John,
possible.
are you there? Okay, John McCoy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful speech you people have delivered. Mine is just only to inform you that agriculture is having a lot of challenges in South Sudan here. And that is simply because there are no policies adopted or implemented to help the farmers. We gave the example in our last meetings that most of the priorities of the government now is to improve the economy or to diversify the economy using agricultural approach. However, the partners supporting the agriculture are a bit reluctant and hesitant. And therefore, the reason why we have to come up with what is so-called PPC, Public-Private Dialogue. The PPD was hosted by the government in Pyramid last year, inviting all the agricultural and food security partners to participate in that convention. And we had resolved that by embarking on agriculture and to improve the lifestyle of the people in South Sudan is to give direct support to the farmers. be it commercial-based farming or a humanitarian approach. Because we have realized that most of the farmers are struggling alone. The fundings or the support coming from the international investors or the international donors go to wrongful hands. People who are not even farming, people who don't even have lands to cultivate. And we came up with a strategy called South Sudan will never starve again. And you can follow me on my link, John Mark McCoy Marial. Most of the interviews were conducted, and I came up with clearly that to serve 10 million people in South Sudan, we only need $10 million. To farm only 200,000 hectares. 200,000, if you read the strategy, Mr. Chair, I think you will be able to depict the positive ideas that are supposed to curb the suffering of the South Sudanese, especially in the context of South Sudan. So agriculture is actually very, very, very left vulnerable. And that is because most of our people who are supposed to support the agriculture comes from different lines, political lines, tribal lines, and they misfire the support. If you want to support the soldiers, support those who are going to the war front. The farmers are in the war front fighting the hunger, are left alone. They see that when there is money, people come with a lot of envelopes, written with a very nice English. All the requirements are attached. And these people grab the opportunities which are supposed to go to the farmers. So to improve this, we need the representatives from you people who are experts in agriculture, and also to encourage the international investors to come and even do investment on agriculture. We know the issue of the land tenure system is very weak in South Sudan, but we can use the local government approach. We can come direct to the community, and then we cooperate with the community, or we sign partnership with the community we have chosen to invest in. Most of our farmers do not have skills. We also need to invest in the skills, because even if we talk with beautiful words, I think these beautiful words cannot help the farmers. The farmers need to actually go for practical. They don't need theories, And if we get an investor who is very courageous to come to South Sudan, choosing one particular area, or even one type of specialization, maybe if it is cereal or legumes, crops, or even peanut, or even in fruit making or juice making, it will a bit open the eyes of the farmers. Given the land topography in South Sudan, we have different lands, we have different types of soils in everywhere. And we also need, it is good that the team is touring the 10 states plus 3 administrative areas, as I have heard earlier on. Let them also develop questionnaires to ask some of the local farmers, because most of the people can give wrong answers. Because most of the people have been coming on the ground here to do the same assessment or baseline survey, but go back with even no feedback. Even no can also help, and you justify the reasons of no. If you are coming back, you can say, yes, I am coming back. Of course, the government tractors we were given without touring or assessing the specifications did not help. They did not help because they were distributed to people who are not even farmers, and they ended up selling them. They ended up, giving or privatizing, selling the spare parts, and majority of them, if not all of them, are not working now. in the country. So if you are coming now to specifically give to the farmers, those who have cleared their farms, it will encourage some of the farmers to increase the level of productivity. Yeah, so this is all that I can say. If we want to improve the agriculture, improve or train the farmers, because and let us avoid this issue of humanitarian intervention, because I have discovered that humanitarian is also misleading the communities. What is the issue of mobilizing the community to do the feeder roads? I mentioned earlier that the feeder roads, some of these roads are not going anywhere. They are not going to any market. They are not going to any farm. But the communities are mobilized to do the road under the pretext of getting food. You know, they call it food for asset. If you are making the road to nowhere, is it an asset? I said this one is not an asset. There is something wrong with our partners, food security partners. Something wrong, government is not monitoring. Something wrong, they are misleading. That is more than even slavery. You cannot mobilize the community to do the roads which are not handmade roads. You can imagine. Some of them are not even passable. They even worsen, especially when the rains come. The rains destroy these feeder roads. So we actually need the investors. Let us change the strategy of humanitarian intervention to privatization. You know, we need investors who should be encouraged to come to South Sudan to produce food and also to train some of our farmers.
Thank you, John. Obviously, the elephant in the room is the insecurity and lack of a friendly and conducive environment for investors. Yeah, but other than that, we appreciate all that you said and your ability to be open about the issues. Yeah, and we need to have these honest discussions. So we thank you for that. Yeah. Welcome, Aurelie. We're so happy to have you. Also, I see our friend from China. Welcome. So both of you can get a chance to have an input once James does his talk. So James, I think over to you. Manas.
Okay. Am I clear?
Yeah, we can hear you, definitely.
Okay. Hello, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is James Nyieer. I'm a South Sudanese living in Omaha, Nebraska. I work for a company called Valmont Industries, and Valmont is the world's largest manufacturer and distributor of mechanized irrigation. And the machine is called the Center Pivot. I am the market development manager for Africa. I have been involved in a few mechanized irrigation projects.
Uh-oh, did we lose him?
I think we lose his voice.
Oh no, Nyieer. We can't hear him.
Yeah, James, what's happening? Are you there? Yeah, go ahead, James.
No, I am here.
No, we lost you for a bit. We couldn't hear you. We couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay.
Like
can you hear me now?
We can. Yes.
Okay. So, did you hear the introduction when I was introducing myself?
We did. Okay. We were just the marketing director for Africa, so marketing director. So that's where we lost you.
Oh, okay. I think that was it. And I think I said I have been involved in a few mechanized irrigation projects in Sudan, Tanzania, Egypt, and Rwanda. So today, as we have come to talk about the topic of agriculture, a path to stability, economic development, and prosperity in South Sudan, I would like to present something in terms of a proposed project titled irrigation for boosting agricultural production in South Sudan by using mechanized agriculture. But before I delve into the presentation, I would like us to keep in mind the following terms of or concepts. First, irrigation, food security, and economic development. For irrigation, irrigation has been a large part of the solution in many parts of the world. So the share of global area that is producing crops, 80% is non-irrigated and 20% is irrigated. That 20% of the irrigated land is responsible for producing 40% of our food. So irrigation is very important, and rain-fed agriculture is not going to cut it anymore. So food security, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization defines it as the state when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. So it's very important. Economic development, hopefully we will find it in the presentation that I will do. So the summary of the project, and I heard Mr. John McCoy concerns, agriculture is not going to develop itself by itself. It needs intensive funding and intensive funding. So the project that I would propose, it would take, let's think of a project that will take 5 years, develop 20,000 hectares, and social welfare for 2,500 households to be constructed, and capacity building for 5 years. And indeed, Mr. McCoy, agriculture in South Sudan is in crisis because the levels of crop and vegetable production in South Sudan remain very low, as is the case in much of Eastern Africa. Farmers rely heavily on rain-fed crop production, meaning erratic or delayed rains can result in poor or no harvest, while heavy rains and flooding can waterlog fields and destroy stocks. So according to the latest integrated food security phase analysis, severe food insecurity is affecting over half of the population, if not more, in South Sudan, with about 7.7 or 0.8 million people, almost 60% of the country's population, likely to face crisis or worse, acute food insecurity, including an estimated a big number of people likely to face catastrophic and acute food insecurity. So the proposed project, the project will use a modified land development approach to introduce sustainable land husbandry measures for upland agriculture on selected sites, as well as developing mechanized irrigation for subsections of each site. The project envisions the production of food crops and high-valued horticultural crops with the strongest marketing potential, with particular focus on organics, on irrigated portions of upland. The project will also represent a transformation of crop intensification with a view to increasing productivity in an environmentally sustainable manner. The project will use participatory land use processes to promote high stakeholder involvement and buy-in, to empower women and men also in the community for comprehensive land management work. So the objectives of the project will look like something like this: installation of physical infrastructures up to 20,000 hectares minimum, equipped with irrigation infrastructure, roads, electricity, and other public infrastructures. So it will involve every sector, almost every sector, to do that. Also, institution development and capacity building through creation of water user associations, market linkage and access to finance for agriculture development, and the project's key drivers would be developing an advanced self-sufficient agriculture sector, thereby becoming food secured in the near future, and a recognized leader and a potentially role model within sub-Saharan Africa in the future. Sub-Saharan Africa is the least irrigated region in the world. It's about only 5%, where in South America is 20%, and it's even higher in Asia, about 40%, 30 to 80%. The second driver would be ensure food security, decrease dependency on imports, increase control over food supply chain, and decrease trading dependencies. The third one, boost local economy by attracting foreign investments, increase employment, and increase tax inflow. And you are right, Mr. John McCoy. We need foreign investments, and we need the right people in the right places to do that. So the economic impact will be, the project has to be profitable. The direct impact by private investors would be investments, employment, foreign currency, the direct impact by tax collection, corporate tax, import, export, labor tax, and so on and so forth. So
okay, we lost him again.
Oh, for some reason, I just heard you. We lost him again.
We lost you briefly at labor tax and so on and so forth. That was the last thing I heard you say.
Say that again. Where did I stop?
Labor tax, and then you said and so on and so forth.
Right. Okay. Good. So, and then the other indirect impact by the ecosystem would be developing transportation, service providers, maintenance, real estate development, trade, and marketing. The national scale impact would be community exposure to technology, benefits, food security, social and livelihood improvement, rural development, youth employment, improvement of education, and improvement of stability and security, which we desperately need in South Sudan. So the project design key commercial objectives would be attract private sector investments by facilitating competitive terms and landscape for investments, increase export by focusing on export crops like avocado, mango, vegetables, stimulate industrial manufacturing in South Sudan by developing industry. Hopefully we will be exporting products made in South Sudan. Boost agriculture sector and ensure food security by building a sustainable mix between stable crops, let's say 70% stable crops and 30% premium crops. Develop rural and community infrastructure, focus on rural areas focus on sustainable impact by focusing on rural areas, focus on sustainable impact on community. And this would be what, our leader, John Garang, has always said, take the city to, take the town to city. So let's develop the rural areas. So project implementation, let's say we start in 2024. I know that is not going to happen. So it will go from 2024 to 2029. And we will increase the irrigated land. Irrigation is central here. We'll reduce agricultural import. I know we import a lot of food from Uganda. Hopefully that will stop. Promotion of high value crops, promotion of private sector agriculture, improve harvesting losses. And that's a big problem. So I know the budget is big. I don't want to scare people. This will cost a lot of money, but I think it's a lofty dream. If we can do part of this, I think we will get somewhere. And with that, I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
I'm going to take this opportunity to jump in briefly. I just want to say that Nyieer is possibly the most important person here, and his connections with Valmont Corporation, Dougherty, University of Nebraska, and so forth. But I will be in touch with you, James, about ways to bring investors and bring major money from the Division of Finance Corporation, for Development Finance Corporation, $200 million. So there's a path forward towards that, and we have formed farm think tanks with people from Nashville and Washington, D.C. and Kentucky. But I will be coming to Omaha, I'm sure, because I need to be sitting across the table from you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daniel. Africa is desperately in need of this kind of money. One of the biggest challenges that I have faced doing my job is funding. Funding is a big problem, and capacity building. I'm managing 4 master students at the University of Nebraska. They are from Sudan. They will graduate actually this year, by the end of the year. So I'm very delighted and looking forward to meet you, whether in Omaha or in Nebraska. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James, for that stupendous presentation. It's good to aim high and to dream and to know that we will scale this phase. We will be a food-producing nation, a stable nation, and a country that literally adopts modernity to usher its people forward.
Nyieer, I have a quick question for James. Can I jump in and ask?
Yeah. I just wanted to thank James. Yeah, thank you, James, and also thank you, Daniel, for your input. Yeah, go ahead, Carnita.
Yeah, James, my question is, in terms of the initiation of this project, what is the feasibility or the likelihood that it can start with crops that are very drought hardy or drought resistant, waterlogged resistant? I don't know the correct agricultural term for that, such as the moringa plant, for instance. It's very hardy in all climates and forms. What's the likelihood that this project could start with crops like that?
James?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Yes. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you, Carnita.
Yeah, the feasibility study is not completed. I have been working with some friends on this project for a while, but the details of all these things are not there yet. But upon request, I think we can provide that. And one of the things that we would like to do in such a project we want to make sure that we are using scientific ways to make sure that the sites that are selected, we do soil testing, we do water testing to make sure that we are, growing the right crops in the right, place. So specifically the crops that you asked about, I don't know, but I think the environment in South Sudan is really conducive to produce a lot of crops, such as the crops that you mentioned. But the key will always be doing the soil testing. I know we don't have a lab in South Sudan, and that could be something that could be developed, create employment also for our young people, and that could be part of the capacity building, right? If we embark on such a big project, and remember, it's only 20,000 hectares, and South Sudan, we literally have millions and millions of hectares that have not been developed yet. So if and when we succeed doing this first, and we can start with a pilot project, only 75 hectares, and then once we complete the 20,000 hectare project successfully, then we can replicate that in many different parts of South Sudan. So that's the vision.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, James. Now, obviously, I think you've mentioned the dynamics in terms of how much is needed. What's if money were available, how long will it take to get this thing started? And again, it's about looking for the conducive part of the country. As Dr. Lual said earlier, there are areas, various pockets of areas that are relatively stable. And I think John mentioned it as well, Marcoy. So we could definitely look at, we want to know just the timeline and what kind of projections, for instance, how quick, if funds were available, can these machines get there, and how soon can you mobilize and literally engage, and how many people would you need to engage to begin with to just say on the pilot project?
Oh, we will have to engage a lot of people, the government, NGOs, financial institutions, universities, right? Because it will require also a lot of research and development. Regarding the timeline, it would be 5 years, probably more, since we have a lot of challenges in South Sudan. But I would say between 5 to 7 years, right? And the land development and irrigation infrastructure will, the money is about 240 million. And I said, I don't want to scare people, but remember, this will develop the economy as we want to diversify our economy in South Sudan. And these kind of projects are going to be there literally forever, right? Capacity building and institution development, that will take about $60 million. The model village, $100 million, right? So, and I think we desperately need that to promote security and instability. And as you rightly mentioned, Nyieer, if we can start a project like this in the areas that we have security, then that will encourage the other areas to replicate this kind of project. So 5 years, total of $400 million. And I think a country like South Sudan, with its partners, can provide that amount.
Excellent. Where has this been done? Is there anywhere in Africa where this thing has lifted off?
It has been done in different ways, not exactly the same. In Rwanda, they have installed 63 center pivots about 10 years or so ago. It's functioning very well. They got help from the Warren Buffett Foundation because his son is a close friend to President Kagame. So that always helps when you have wealthy friends like that. He has also provided them with money to educate 200 students who were brought to Nebraska. They studied agriculture. Some of them, I think, are in the graduate school as we speak. So this is one thing. In Sudan, the model was a bit different. Zadna has developed a lot of land, and they have bought a lot of center pivots from us. And the environment there in North Sudan is not as conducive as our environment in South Sudan. So they have done a lot of irrigation infrastructure development. Unfortunately, the war derailed everything as we speak, but it was a multi-billion project where they actually built a water pump on the River Nile to provide water for all these center pivots. So yeah, so there are different models. You can look at it different ways. Also in Egypt, actually they have dug canals like 300, 400 kilometers into the desert. And they are farming. They're doing desert farming using the center pivot technology. So yeah, the details can be worked out. Of course, a lot of things can change, and we can use different business models. There are different ways to go about it.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, James. Ida, welcome. Go ahead. Welcome, Wani Michael. Welcome, Guy Deng as well.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dr. Tech. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, James, I missed most of your presentation, but I wanted to ask you about, I mean, when you talk about central pivots, it sounds like large-scale farming. And I wanted to ask you about small-scale farming. You know, the small scale in the size like allotments, or maybe an acre or two, but given to a lot of different small-scale farmers. Is there anything you can say about that? Because I hear that in Jamaica, there's certain parts where the government might lend a tractor, and the farmers might have an acre or 2 acres, you know, perhaps at the most up to 3 or 5 acres. But they're doing well with their farming. And I'm wondering if any of that is in the planning for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. Definitely, I think we're not going to live in a world where we're going to get rid of smallholder farmers. And I understand that 60 to 70% of our smallholder farmers, you know, are in Africa, where, you know, a farmer would own something between half an acre to 5, even 10 acres is considered to be, you know, a small farm. So, but in this case, the main focus is commercial mechanized farming. But for those smallholder farmers, we don't want to also leave them behind. I know when I was a young kid in South Sudan, I visited where I saw a lot of huts and people would just grow their food, behind their huts. We have developed a concept called community-based irrigation, because irrigation is key, right? Even the smallholder farmers cannot just continue depending on rain-fed agriculture. So irrigation has to be incorporated, and to incorporate these smallholder farmers, we have to do small, community-based irrigation, where we do land consolidation and know who got what, and we can do the math and put all of them under one big center pivot where they can be working, and know we can do the math, right? You got 3 hectares, this is what you will get. I got 2, this is what I will get. But as long as we are using irrigation, our productivity is going to go up, because irrigation increases productivity yields from 1 to 4 times compared to rain-fed. It enables investments in other inputs to increase yields also, such as seed, machinery, and fertilizer. So we want our smallholder farmers to benefit from that, right? So yeah, I think the only way to do that is to consolidate land and put many farmers under a big center pivot. Thank you. I hope I have answered your question, Ida.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It would be good to hear that it's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ida, a good person to talk to is Dr. Carnita, because she's actually into practical solutions and she's done a lot and she's involved in a lot in Ghana. So I think there's a lot we could learn from her as well, in terms of, small scale progressing forward. Wani Michael, welcome back. Kush, you're very welcome. Daniel is here still. Andrew, over to you. Kush, we'll give you a chance shortly, and also Arele, will give you chances to contribute. Go ahead. Andrew.
Thank you, Justin. And thank you, James, for the wonderful presentation. It's very informative. I just wanted to ask, I'm not very well versed when it comes to farming technologies, but I have seen, just when looking at technologies in general, there's something called drip irrigation. So I just wanted to ask, what is the difference between sort of drip irrigation compared to center pivots, which you mentioned, and which one's more economical, which one's the better approach when it comes to farming? Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew, for that question. The difference between drip irrigation and the center pivot irrigation, with the center pivot irrigation, you are using sprinklers. It's basically like artificial rain, where the drip, you are targeting actually the roots, right? So, but this debate, because drip is our competitor, the center pivot is the most efficient machine when it comes to irrigation. But you cannot use center pivot irrigation on all farms, because you actually need medium to big commercial farms. So I think both of them, it's not either or. It depends on the project that you are using. If you have a small, farm project where you are growing, let's say citrus trees, of course, drip irrigation would be better. But when the benefit or the advantage of using center pivot is when land is not an issue. So, and I don't think land would be an issue in South Sudan, because the center pivot rotates. The bigger the land is, or the center pivot, the more production that you get. You see, So yeah, so it's not either or. They are both good, but if you are embarking on big commercial farming, center is the way to go, and it will be drip irrigation by far. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I suppose this sort of ties back to Ida's question as well. So when it comes to smaller scale farmers, then potentially drip could be the better option compared to center pivots.
Right, and the problem with the drip, it's definitely better when you are using it on small farms, because it's labor intensive, right? You cannot, use that on a 50-hectare farm. That's just gonna drain your profits, and it will not be the most efficient way to do farming or irrigation. Yeah. So there is a use for each, technology.
Let me just add a couple of things to what James has said. First of all, when you do a central pivot, it's more like rain, so it's actually able to capture nitrogen from the air as it comes through the air. And nitrogen is critical, especially if you don't want to use a lot of fertilizer. But South Sudan not only has enough land, but it has enough water. I've written a letter to the governors of South Sudan. They accepted and approved it to build canal systems that also help manage the rivers so that they don't flood, but at the same time preserve the water for farming and bring it to places where they can use drip irrigation or central pivot irrigation. So we have created a think tank, a couple of them, for getting major funding. And I would like to up the concept of the pilot projects getting off by November of next year, and bringing enough to where we can use those pilot projects to leverage within a year to bring $100–200 million. Some of these farms may have to be near Lake Turkana in Kenya initially, or some other location where it's safe and secure. But again, the most important thing for South Sudan is a free South Sudan, because the parties have united. So if you're part of a political party, encourage them to become united in one line behind one council and ultimately one presidential candidate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. You really raise our hopes for changes, and thank you for the initiatives you've already done. And it's interesting that you've had a positive response as well from the governors. How far has that gone, or is it in the making now?
Our process is in consideration. I'm going to put a link here for different documents. One called Farm Africa, that shows a new paradigm for how local small farmers can incorporate. Cooperatives don't work very well. Corporations do, but the local people need to continue ultimately to own and run their own farms, bringing investors and master farmers in to work with them. And I will discuss this more fully with James, and we will push this envelope of getting major funding moving this coming fall. When the rains stop, we should be, God willing, on the ground. We have one farm in South Sudan now by one of our team members, growing eucalyptus trees for poles, a very good cash crop for the country. And but I will put my link to the Google Drive. If you need access, email me. I think it'll send you an email out. But hopefully it works. I'm still learning the tech on some of this stuff. But I will post that into the chat.
Excellent.
It'll have several of these documents, including the letter to the UN, AU, etc., as I've mentioned before in the chat.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And definitely there will be a lot of interest from the likes of John Marcoy, obviously. So we will hopefully be liaising with you to aid our farmers in that sense, yeah, and also to coordinate with the government should there be a need to. If you get stuck anywhere, we could always be all interesting. Again, we think agriculture is also a source and a path to peace. It may be far-fetched, but if there's an incentive, as Mr. Veni once said, if you create a middle class, you actually discourage war. So if people are food secure, it could be an incentive for peace. And as James said, we've been toying with this idea that if you could actually exploit the stable territories now and do these major mechanical farming, you could actually create that incentive around other parts of the country because they'll be also eager to have peace and to have replicas of the same thing. So the sky's the limit. Let's keep pushing. I want to give a chance to Brother Werele. Werele, you're very welcome. We haven't heard your voice for a while, so please feel free to contribute. Then we'll go to Gabriel Loy after that, and anybody else after that, Wani as well, if you want, and anybody in the room. Engineer Magai. Werele, over to you.
All right. Am I audible?
You are very much. Welcome, my brother.
Thank you very much. It's been a while, yes. Yeah, thank you very much. I heard Dr. Lual's submission and also James. James, thank you for your presentation. I think can agree that that is one of the things. I mean, this is a projects. Some of the projects that can boost our capacity in terms of production. And the challenges, I think, as you have laid in your presentation and the earlier submission from Dr. Lual, is that we can start with in areas where security is relatively stable as a pilot. And I will add to that also the other challenges of the production, which is infrastructure, roads, and marketing, and there are a lot of things. I've been to the rural areas, and there are issues that I'm not sure if in the scope of your project. I know you did say that it spans to 5 years on average, and you gave some estimate in terms of cost. So what I would like to know is how, given your experience in Sudan and maybe in Rwanda, how does that the coordination between the private entity of the project and the public entity of the project, which is the government? Because the way I see the figures here is you have a project that runs for 5 years, and the cash that you mentioned, I know I can say that the return in that investment is going to be beyond these 5 years. So, and you talked of mobilizing private finances from outside, and you have this issue of risk, not only security risk, but also country risk in terms of ability of the country to repay. So how does that work? Leave the technical part, but how does the project work? Who is the main driver of the project? Is it the private entity or is it the government, say a representative in the institutions like the Agricultural Bank? Somebody need to take the pay, to ensure the investors how this project is going to pay back, given that our current farmers, we call them farmers, but in reality they're not producing yet. So their skills and infrastructure will not guarantee any investor with that market dynamics that they will get a pay in the investment out of these projects. So can you just highlight this point? Sorry if I've taken much time here.
No, thank you, Brother Warili. It has been a while. Yeah, this is a $1 million question, right? When it comes to South Sudan. Unfortunately, currently the situation is not that conducive. You know, these investors, they will always do their SWOT analysis, right? What is the incentive for them? And as you asked, how are they going to get their money back? As Brother Nyieer mentioned earlier, you know, the biggest elephant in the room is security. But the owner of this project has to be, you know, the government. Of course, the government, which is the public sector, will work hand in hand with the private sector. And as we see South Sudan right now, do we even have, you know, national companies that could work in these projects? Unfortunately, the answer would be no. So most of the private sector will have to come from the neighboring countries or even China. And the government also has to come up with a lot of you know, things to secure that this will come to fruition, and also to make sure that even when we bring in the private sector, a lot of our youth, you know, have to be employed, and this is one way to avert insecurity once they are involved in employment and uplifting the farmers, you know, from poverty. So that should be the incentive. But it is incumbent upon the government to really bring security and secure that South Sudan. I mean, potentially South Sudan is a great place, provided that everything is in place. But it's really hard to have solid answers as South Sudan stands, and this is one of the things that should really encourage the government to work hard. As Africa, as you know, the world is scrambling for Africa. If we are not careful and bring security in the near future, this development in Africa, we will miss this boat, because they are not going to be waiting for South Sudan until security comes back. They will just invest in these neighboring sleeping giants, agricultural sleeping giants, such as Uganda. As we speak, even though Uganda is feeding us today, their agriculture is not that developed in terms of mechanized irrigation and agriculture. And Sudan had this big ambitious dream, which has been derailed by the war, but their intention was to dominate, you know, the market. And the first country that they would dominate is South Sudan. So the longer it takes to bring security to South Sudan, the more will be left behind, and it will be very hard, if not impossible, for us to catch up. So I hope I have answered your question, but this is $1 million question, as I said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. Yeah, over to you, Warale. Do you want to?
No, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, wonderful. Your questions were really necessary, because again, it's how friendly is government to investment, and to what extent can businesses be encouraged to come. So incentives obviously are, there should be security, the banking sector, the ability to move or to access currency. All of these are extremely important, but also generally in terms of people want to gauge their business in terms of how long they could be within that market, and forecast. If forecast means there's likely to be wars here and there, or there's insecurity there and over here, it discourages. So the question really is the likes of Manon and others, what can be done differently to ensure that the agricultural sector lifts off, but that clearly hinges on security? Manon and others, if anybody wants to step in, we need to know what can be done differently, and even if agriculture can be a peace vehicle, if you want to put it, that can encourage our people to, as Warele said, and we've been saying, perhaps in Western Equatoria, the bulk of it is very secure and is very fertile. Eastern Equatoria is relatively more secure than most other places. Central Equatoria as well, but to a lesser extent now. But Western Bahr Ghazal is relatively secure. Lakes now, unlike before. Warab, Northern Bahr Ghazal. So there are areas really that these things can be done. But one of the things, as I do business on the side, one of the things investors have always said, they don't want to invest without guarantees. And it rhymes with Warele's question. If there are no guarantees, what happens if there's a war? So investors really need to know that, because obviously what they're doing is investing and also contributing to the economy. So for instance, people who you would ask to install or develop refineries, or even to set up a gold refinery, I've always said, what's the guarantee? If I put in so much money, how do we get it back out? And most times the government says, we can only give you security, but you look for insurance. And I guess insurance for such things would be a humongous amount, and very discouraging to investors. So really, we're in a catch-22, but let's hear our ideas. And perhaps Daniel could also, if you've worked in similar territories to South Sudan, what's the way forward?
Can I say something?
Jackson, I'm ready.
Yeah. Okay, just hold on, Manon. Yeah, Warele, go ahead first. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
And Manon will come to you shortly. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of solutions, we need to, there are things that we can't avoid, like you mentioned, what investors look at, be it domestic or regional, or even investors from the international markets. They look for the same things: security, stability of the currency, stability of the political setup. This is what guarantees them. So politicians need to work on that in the long run. But I am of the opinion that any we're talking of sustainability of any project, need to involve the locals. That's very important. And the way our human resources are, the stage they're in, whatever project we are working should have a side project that addresses their current status and brings them up, engaging them in these big projects. If you don't do that, regardless of technology you bring in, if you don't relate the locals to the projects you're doing, this is the biggest source of insecurity. The last point in terms of policy is what I think those of Dr. Lual is doing now, and it has been ignored for the last, I don't know, since we started, the Agricultural Bank. At this stage, the state need to take the responsibility and the risks that are involved with developing this sector. I have always said that the IMF will tell you something else. They will tell you that private sector can build such an industry. That is not the case. You as a state needs to, you need to align your development in terms of infrastructure, roads, to your agricultural bank, and how it helps our farmers, and how the central bank guarantees security for foreign investors. That's all I can say. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that brilliant contribution, Warele. And again, it's getting the politics right, but it's the challenges really. Yeah, but go ahead, Manon, and then we'll come to Daniel.
Can I just say something briefly before Manon comes in?
Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah, Manon's happy with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Warele, again, security is paramount. Without security, nothing will come to fruition. I just want to give two quick examples of the projects that like big commercial projects that I was involved in Sudan, and apply that in the case of South Sudan, if we were to start anytime soon. And we should start anytime soon for one reason, to feed our people, right? Because food insecurity is a huge problem right now. In Sudan, the projects that we have been working on, they are heavily guarded by the military. Imagine that, even though they don't have war in North Sudan. Also in Egypt, the Toshka project, you can Google that. Egypt, of course, they don't have war, but even those projects that are deep in the desert are heavily also guarded by the military, right? Because you want to protect that infrastructure. For example, only the machines that Zadna, and this is one private sector company, Zadna, it has bought machines for over $300 million. In the case of Egypt, only to buy the machines and build some of the infrastructure, they have invested $8 billion. See, so because they are seeing what is coming, this freight train of food insecurity, it's a big issue. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Now the question really would be, why do these people see the benefits of food security and other countries do not? Because surely if the society is secure is one thing. The secondly, you can also export what you surplus. If anything, you can use food as a product for currency, gaining hard currency. So over to you, Manon. Yeah. John will come to you shortly. Manon, go ahead. Manon, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you, Justin, again.
Okay.
I think I agree with many of presenters, especially the question of security. But the question of security always has become a psychological in many of the people who are interested to invest in South Sudan. Because as we heard from Dr. Lual, it is not all South Sudan that is insecure. There are places or states that actually investment can move on. And this is one of the mistakes of the government of South Sudan. Of course, if they were actually investing or attract the investment for the areas that are secure or are safe, it will definitely encourage the other area that are insecure to become secure. Because insecurity itself is a lack of employment, lack of the food on the table. That's the security, insecurity itself. So creating job or encouraging more job creation through any investment or any economic developmental activities in the country will definitely result into a peace dividend within the country itself. But from my experience, which I started last year, is the first time that I went back home and started doing agriculture, which I have 65 hectares, and I focus on groundnut for Sudan and sorghums, which sorghum totally failed, and the reason of the fail, even within the ground, is the projection that we're expecting. We're supposed to have at least 600 bags, which is one bag should be at least 100 kilo of groundnut. Of the sorghum. But it's go back also to issue of waters and lack of the testing of the soils. And clearing of the land also is a challenge, because even though I cleared it last year, I'm continuing to clear it this year, because we are using local tools to clear the land and clear heavily trees, So because of lack of proper clearing, the crops is not getting enough suns, and that's contribute into the low production, which is actually this year we are resuming to make more clearance this year. and also water is a problem because rain are not sustainable, which I really support the issue of irrigations for small farmers in themselves. They need irrigation, and irrigation in South Sudan, the water is not far away. The most places you can gain the water, maybe 5 meters to 10 meters. The deepest could go to 15 meters or more than 15 or 20 meters for most cases, for some small portion of the places. But most of the places in South Sudan, you can get a water 8 meters, 10 meters, even some places 5 meters, 6 meters. So here supporting the farmers with the small irrigation so they can continue farming twice a year, at least twice a year, and also diversification of the crops itself, and give them the seeds that are more diverse, and also technical support. The farmers, they need technical support. Project like what being presented by James, which is 240 billion, is a huge project also. But the most important here, as Aurelio mentioned, those type of big projects, it's not just partner with the government, but also putting the portion of amount to make a partnership with the small farmers, indigenous, within the potential area of investment. I think is important. And this is going to be my question to James. If there's an amount that allocated for the partnership or support the small farmers as a part of this project that actually need like 240 million US dollar. The other thing also, when we have those projects, let us not looking that there are no money in South Sudan. This project also can put a portion of South Sudanese who are interested in agriculture to invest, not just only investors alone being a potential bringing those contribution alone, but South Sudanese also can participate in those type of a huge project, because in the end of the day, we need to support and avoid the foreigners also controlling over the business and the market in South Sudan. And we already made mistake because the market now is being controlled by foreigners and outside investors, and that's why we have issue of hard currency challenges in the country. Because those who are investing in the country, they exchange their money and they are looking for the hard currency to send it back to their home. And this is the big mistake. So project that we are planning, especially with South Sudanese, we have to ensure that the community benefit, which could come as a form of incentive or a form of supporting local investors or local business, small businesses, to encourage the South Sudanese also to have a share in the wealth that is going to be grow within the country. So is there an amount that allocated, for example, for us partnership with small farmers within South Sudan with this project? And the issue of security guarantee, as you raised it, I think we need also to advocate for our government to recognize that in most investors in the West, they have security assessment. And also they have insurance, especially with these big projects. So for our government to veer away from giving guarantees, and when they give guarantees also, they have to make sure also they do their own assessment as a government, independent assessment. And when they accept the investors to come in, they ensure that the location or the areas that are going to invest at least are less risk. Is another way also. You can give a guarantee to the investors and ensure that you're taking him to the area or her to the area that is more or less risky. So at least you protect yourself as a government also not to be responsible for any cause of losses. Because when they talk about the cause of losses or guaranteed, it's because South Sudan is a country that is still at war. And if there is any risky as a result of war, as we've seen, a lot of people lost their businesses in Bor during the 2013 Unity State in Malakal. Those are examples that our government need also to ensure. But I don't think that investors will come in without getting a guarantee from the government. And I think those are the questions that Dr. Lual, as one of Economics cluster member and advisor, we need to hear from him. What are the guarantees South Sudan is offering for investors, because we heard a lot. We need investors. We need investors. But you have also, as investors are bringing some incentive to the country, we have also as the South Sudanese government to provide them also some incentive, and the incentives that they need is to ensure that there's money is not going to be at risk if they bring it in their investment to the country. Those are the things that we have also to advocate for it as the South Sudanese, to ensure the investors have to come in to invest in our country. But most likely, South Sudan need in agriculture, we need irrigation, and also we need a feeder road. I heard earlier Magai was against the feeder road, but feeder road are very important for the farmers in order for them to access into the market. But what NGOs are doing is a different things. I understand that, but feeder roads are very important, you know. And our government also need to invest in infrastructure, such as energy. You know, any investors, they will look for the energy. They will look for the road infrastructure. You know, it's not just the security alone. People are talking about security, but they think that we should invest on it, like investing in infrastructure and energy, you know, is another way of attracting the investors, you know. But if investor come in, even if we have security and there's no infrastructure in the place, how are they going to start to invest it now, you know, when they are lacking infrastructure that they need for them to start their business in South Sudan? So those are the things that we need to focus on and encourage them to be available, or to be at least provided, in order for investor to be comfortable to come and invest in South Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you, Manon, for raising those questions. I think we're going to try and bring in John after Daniel comes in, because we need to know again, you and Warele raised important issues of corporate social responsibility, but that hinges on how organized we are. What is the state of our business fraternity? How organized are they? Also the farmers union, how organized are they? And then we will want to know whether there's a possibility of an investment conference on agriculture. Perhaps when Dr. Lual comes back again, with the likes of yourself, we need to be thinking on specifically focusing, and particularly when the government talks of diversifying the economy, we should see agriculture as a path to peace, because all of us need food security. We can actually prioritize. I'm sure James and I were talking yesterday, if there's peace in lakes, and somebody comes and invests in lakes, Warab would say we also need this investment, and they'll find a way to make sure there's peace. And so the whole thing would spread, as Warele also mentioned. So over to you, Mr. Daniel, and then we'll go to John, and then I want to bring in Wani, Michael, as well as Guy, John Alwong will come to you shortly after Daniel, and then go to Wani, and then Guy and Kush as well. You need to come in, and anybody else in the room. Go ahead, Daniel, if you just want to. We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Daniel. Daniel, we cannot hear you. Cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
Can't hear you. We can hear you now, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am in a Denny's, so I can't have music in the background. But let me just say that I've laid out a strategy for bringing investors and master farmers from the U.S., Canada, and the Netherlands, and for the farming project. And we've created think tanks, and I will talk more with Mr. Nyieer, James, as soon, and maybe even move to Omaha this coming week to begin to work with him on this, because there is the Dougherty Foundation, there's Howard Buffett, as he mentioned before, the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. We have the Ag Department involved with us, and Valmont Corporation. So with that core, we can gather farmers from the United States to invest in partnerships with the local farmers. And the idea is that over a period of time, the local farmers will be able to buy out their investors. The investors can take the money and move it to other farms, or can actually move it to processing. For example, creating avocado juice with orange juice and selling it in the world markets. So this strategy is something that we can pursue vigorously together and lay it out. I am putting it into a book that I'm trying to finish writing on Africa's future, with a large focus on South Sudan. I've been to Ethiopia 50 times, first as a pastor, and training church leaders there, but switching to economic development because my people are suffering in poverty. And so God has laid this vision of this farm Africa. I put it in the link to the Google Drive, and I can post it here as well, but that spells out this vision and this method and process. But I think it's possible by 1 year from now, even 9 months from now, to initiate some pilot project farms, not necessarily beginning in South Sudan only, especially if the area is insecure, but doing it in Kenya and Ethiopia with the idea that it's a U.S. 51% owned company, even though South Sudanese people are inside that company. Yeah. Even guys from London can be inside that company as shareholders, and that company can access development finance corporation money, 100, 200, and from there, the World Bank would get involved and it would be 400 million. So there's a path to what James Yar's financial projections are. And these pilot projects can begin sooner than later. If we work together, you know, all of this is about togetherness, you know.
Absolutely.
Many of you are, most are Christians. Jesus once said, unless two agree, how can they walk together? Getting agreement to walk together, and even Paul said once that the purpose of God, one of our blessings is, as Christians, is that we have understand God's purpose in history, which is to bring all things together under one head, even Jesus Christ, you know, under his banner, so to speak. So the point is that if we work together, we need to have a positive vision for South Sudan. I was with Chol and Paul Mator, Manwak in Indianapolis in the mayor's office. One of our South Sudanese people writes the bonds for the city's buildings. And he suggested that we can do the infrastructure by inviting 10 countries to build 10 roads and highways. And I suggested building also canals. Canals can serve the country as inland water airports. It can provide the water for Valmont to come and irrigate the land around with its sprinkler systems. Valmont Corporation should get involved in this project because it will be a model for all the rest of Africa. South Sudan can take the lead, but it must first of all come together to unify itself around one political leader this year. So in that Google Drive, there's something called the South Sudan Caucus Network. And it's basically a manual still being worked on. It's open source, but it's a way to gather groups using WhatsApp and Clubhouse across the South Sudanese community. We have groups in Kakuma, multiple groups, Baragazal, Jonglei, Mabior County, London, Nashville, Tennessee, Chicago. So we need to multiply these units and unify the people of South Sudan so that we can stand in one line, ultimately behind one leader. I'm not choosing the leader, that's not my function, but it is as a pastor to advise and give advice from my background. You know, the US revolution, when they first voted, they didn't have a census. They didn't have even a way to register voters. They didn't have many of the things that are being demanded of the South Sudanese. They simply voted. And we can vote through these caucus networks, and we can get the international community to recognize this movement among the South Sudanese people. But it does require that people meet regularly and meet instead of fighting. Yeah, meeting and talking and joining together until they're unified behind a council of leaders. And that council of leaders can suggest a new form of government for the country that is includes all the tribes. But more on that later. Anyway, that's enough said. You've seen my comments on cooperatives to answer your questions about that, why corporations work better, but they must include the local stakeholders. Anyway, that's enough said. I think we have a bright future for South Sudan, and that vision can happen if we work together.
Amen, amen. My heart is, you've warmed my heart, Daniel. and all that you say is what we want, because we think peace can come through development for sure, but it obviously needs friends, it needs investment, it needs the will, and as you said, the unity of the people. I think really, and maybe John can come in after John Along comes in. There's got to be a thinking that food security is important, diversifying our economy. If these things can be coupled with investors, for instance, would be the bare minimum of what your investors would want, Daniel. Surely security, as Warele said earlier, there are basic things, and if we can tick those boxes, and maybe holding a huge conference to really iron out these issues, that we must use agriculture as a means to creating peace. We must have the basic necessities of investors met by the government, but the government must also look at the need to create even stock exchange in order to encourage investors to come in, let alone help organize all our people for corporate social responsibility, because investors should also not just be out for profits. They have to be in it to make sure, and I really like what you said, that eventually the locals can buy out those investors or have lion shares or some element of involvement. And so this is more like social enterprise, and this is what we need really. So thank you for that. Yeah, thank you so much. John Luong?
Can I chip in quickly, because I'm traveling to South Dakota.
Okay.
I'll be listening. Maybe I'm not going to say anything after this.
Sure. No. We definitely need you here because the other speakers didn't come. So you have to. Is somebody driving or you're driving?
I'll be driving. But
all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay, go ahead, James.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel. This is a very ambitious project that can solve a lot of our problems, particularly food insecurity and security in general. Manon, you have said a lot of good things, and I just want to address the point of the estimated budget, right? So it's 400 million. So let us think of this project as not only just building the farms. We are also going to build the roads that would connect the production areas to the markets, right? So that's why the budget is for land development, which includes irrigation infrastructure and irrigation maintenance, which Daniel elaborated on. So that's $240 million. In the grand scheme of things, this is not a lot of money, especially when it comes to countries. And for a country like South Sudan, an oil-producing country, what is it? Is it like the third producing country in Africa? That is really huge with the small population that we have, right? Our population is comparable to the population of Rwanda, with an area that is 25 times the area of Rwanda. But we have tremendous, resources in terms of water, the weather itself, the soil, and so on and so forth. And capacity building is very, very important. We have to look forward, also in terms of actually breeding a new, leaders in agriculture that are going to be technology savvy. So that's why that budget is estimated at 60. And a lot of things can change. We can shrink that to smaller pilot projects, and also the model village, right? We want to build homes as we are in war or currently. These people need to go back to homes, to their homes, and this budget also can build at least 2,500 or 2,500 households, right? So the biggest stakeholder has to be the government, and one strategy that will really attract investors is that the government has to come up with a big chunk of the budget, right? So that is called having a skin in the game. So if we are just going to depend on investors, that is not really going to help. So let's say 400. If South Sudan, says I'm going to put down $200 million, that will encourage a lot of investors because they know now you have a skin in the game. So we don't have to leave this for other people, and it has to be community based or community oriented, because at the end of building such a project, it has to be handed over to our people, to the local community. This should not be taken by any foreign investor. The foreign investors can get what they can get in terms of providing the services while we are developing this. We are working on this capacity building and institution development. But it's something that it's better to start it today rather than starting 5 years later or 10 years later, because it might be too late. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you for that. John Luong, and then Wani, you'll come in. John Luong.
Yeah. Just drop your contact, James.
Sure, we'll do.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to be here today. So I greet all of you in wherever you are today. It is my pleasure to be part of this topic. So I'm by name John Luong, as you call me. So I'm South Sudanese, based in Kampala. So I do recognize and pass my regards to Honorable DR in his absence. I will not talk much about agriculture, as my brothers talk about it since we started. We all know the importance of agriculture and the goodness of agriculture and what agriculture is. So the only part that I will talk is about the challenges or the problems or the negative part that we can face as South Sudanese in agriculture. So we as South Sudanese, first of all, we have different ideologies. We have our own ways of doing things. So these challenges, I may start with the conflicts and instability. Like now the investors cannot invest in a country where there is instability politically and also traditionally. So, and we as South Sudanese, we face challenge in these ones because we are subjected to conflicts in wherever in the country, all across the country. So people are subjected to conflicts. People are not living in peace. So an agriculture, it is not only the government or these NGOs that can develop this agriculture. If we don't join our hand together as South Sudanese, then those investors cannot do anything, because if a person tries to do anything and you came in with your violence, you come and spoil it, there's no room where an investor can do anything. That was one of the challenge. So in that challenge, it needs the investors to come and educate us, to come and teach people about being in peace. That is where agriculture can be established in South Sudan. That is one of the challenge I observe. Another challenge is land tenure. We got issues in lands because, like in South Sudan now, people have divided themselves. That we are from this part, we are from these regions. So although a person have idea, or the people are being a fruitful subjection about the agriculture, then due to the lack of the lands, or due to the conflict in the land that has been placed by the citizens, then I don't think whether we can be able to carry out the agricultural activities within the country. Second to it, agriculture is not only about farming and cultivating these crops. Agriculture can also include these livestock, keeping of these cattle, keeping of these goats, cows, and other sheep. So in agriculture, all of these ones are involved. But in South Sudan, we don't practice, we don't allow freedoms of movements in this country, because these people can say we are from this side, so we don't need these people from this side to come to this land, and there's nobody in that land. To make the matter worse, nobody is living in that land, and you are saying that is for our grants. So in order for us to have a good agricultural fields in South Sudan, we have to practice the freedoms. We all have to have freedom of South Sudan as a land, and other countries, in order for the people with the abilities to carry out agricultural activities to carry out their duties freely without being disturbed. So, in my own opinion, as brothers and sisters, so the only things I see, like, although we have some investors and we have not yet settled ourselves to give time to practice these things, like to be peacefully to live as brothers and sisters, then we allow those brothers to do their things. Also, we South Sudanese, we don't appreciate ourselves. Although you come with a good idea, people will come with different opinions that will oppose that ones. So I would like to thank all of you for your times, but I suggest, like, you people can come and educate people about this agriculture and how people can add more efforts on these agricultural activities. Agriculture has been affected by many different things in the country. Agriculture is suffering politically, and also these ones from the communities. So in order to restore back our agriculture, we need to join our hands. And to join these hands, it needs somebody to apply that effort, to unite people, to understand what agriculture is. You cannot carry out agriculture without lands. So if we talk about agriculture, we also involve this land that create issues in this country. If I take you away in the topic, then I am so sorry for that. And this is what I wish to share with you.
You didn't at all, John. Thank you for that amazing contribution there. So we're very happy for all that you've said. A lot of it hinges on agriculture, as you said, is wide. Actually, next week we'll be looking at livestock and rural economy. So we are definitely very interested in other aspects of agriculture. And thank you for your contribution. Over to Wani Michael. Wani Michael, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, my brother, for giving me the opportunity. And I listened keenly to a number of presentations, and I want to associate myself with those presentations. And I want to say that I think, let me start with my recommendation, is that I think this kind of conversation, we need somebody from the government. I was even wondering if you could be able to hand for the undersecretary in the Ministry of Agriculture to listen to some of these conversations and see some of the opportunities that they can be able to tap into. And I think these are the conversations that they should be. I expect somebody from the government to be able to, if not even participate as such, but also listen to some of the brilliant ideas that have come. And as people were making presentation, my mind is taken back to the $4 billion that was lost just like that, I think in 2012 or 2013, and how we have mismanaged our oil money. And again, my mind was taken back to what Dr. John Garang said of using the oil money to densify the economy, specifically focusing on agriculture. And I do agree with a lot of speakers. And I think for me, from the outset, is before I even talk about commercialized agriculture, for me is how do we make agriculture domestically available, food available to people? Because the recent report from the UN indicate that a huge, I think about 9 million South Sudanese are going to go hungry in the country. So even before we could talk about commercialized agriculture, what about providing providing food to the people through agriculture? And I think it's something that we really need to look at. That is from the aspect of the consumption, because we import a lot of food from Kenya, Uganda, mostly. Food that we can be able to produce because we have very fertile soil. For example, the western part of South Sudan, I'm talking about the Western Equatoria region. It's one of the regions that produce a lot of food, for example, every year, but there seems to be no investment put in terms of how they can mainstream the whole agricultural sector to commercialize it, so that also they're able to generate money, income for themselves, to be able to pay their children in school and be able to improve their own livelihood. So there are a lot of opportunities in terms of agriculture that first of all, we need to feed the 9 million people who are hungry, who doesn't have food domestically, before we could think about exporting food outside. Because we spend a lot of money in giving out to the foreign exchange, so that we're able to import food every year. You might have heard of the central bank giving weekly allocation to companies to be able to, to give to traders to go and buy foodstuff. Recently, you heard of government had
Nyieer, I think we've lost him.
Hi, Wani, are you there? Wani? Yeah, he'll connect. He's somewhere. He always gets this. Yeah. Welcome, Panyar. Yeah, and welcome anybody else who has just joined. I wanted to ask Andrew. Andrew, if you put on your banking hat and your business hat and think of incentives that could be created to bring in investors, what would they be? If you had to talk to the government and advise them on what needs to be done, what would be that 4 or 5 list of 5 or 6 things to build investor confidence?
Hi, Justin. That's an interesting question. I don't know if I can come up with 4 other incentives before the first one is achieved, and it's something that we've already spoken about quite detailed already, and that is security, right? If you can't provide security for the investors, security to see the investment grow, security to see that they don't lose everything that they invest, then we can't speak about anything else before that, I think. So that's key, essentially. As for the other 4, I'll need to have a bit of a think beyond the first one, but that's critical.
I totally agree, but what about incentives? Let's say, obviously, we don't want to sell our land, but there could be tax-free incentives or some kind of I don't know. I'm just thinking aloud, but you're right. It's a process, but it is a case of synchronizing the fears of investors, but also cajoling the government to also come closer to. Because again, it means more money in the country. It means more economic viability. It means, peace is coming, is around the corner, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. And then you said it. So one of them being, tax breaks are a big thing when it comes to trying to get foreign companies to come to invest in your country. But then I don't know how the tax system already currently operates in South Sudan. I suppose another thing I've seen in the comments at the moment, and you just alluded to right now, was land ownership. I don't actually think that's a thing in South Sudan. I could be wrong, but I know that the likes of Sweden and a few other countries have rented, or they have a lease on land for a specific period of time. So I think what Daniel was alluding to when he mentioned 51% of ownership going to the US, I think he meant from a business perspective as opposed to ownership of the land itself. But I'll have to think about this and get back to you on that one.
No, that's fine. I totally agree. I mean, again, we hear gold is being mined, but then where is it? The government should actually have gold reserves now that they could use as guarantee for would-be investment, and maybe that's one of the ways that if we could have enough deposited or reserved gold, it could be a way of guaranteeing investors, and maybe. This, because there's got to be a trade-off. There's got to be something. Obviously, it's our sovereignty now is probably shaken a bit. Our credit rating. I don't know where it is at the moment, but it's probably fairly low. Yeah, but anyway, don't
Can
worry.
I chip in just for a minute?
Can I finish my point? Sorry, guys.
Okay, you're back. Go ahead.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, I had a network issue. So I think also there are funding opportunities in South Sudan, and I'm aware to this fact. For example, I think recently the government signed a multi-million dollar project on agriculture between, I think, the World Bank and the Ministry of Agriculture. But I think also there are opportunities with the African Development Bank and other institutions that exist in South Sudan. But you see, the problem we have in South Sudan is you have a weak government institutions, and sometimes, and I know Dr. Lual is here, he might agree or disagree with me that sometimes these financial institutions find it hard to fund government directly, so they had to subcontract either NGO or subcontract a private company or whether international company to be able to come and to come and implement some of these projects. When I was in Juba in 2021, I remember attending a meeting at the World Bank, and the discussion was about, and one of the key discussion was about agriculture and how they were able to engage young people. And I remember when also the EU, European Union, was working on their 5-year plan, strategic plan for South Sudan. One of the key aspects was, of course, agriculture and looking at how to engage young people into this sector, and how women and other people can be engaged also, so that they're able to sustain their livelihood. So I think a lot of conversation really need to happen. And I said, as I said earlier, I was hoping that somebody from the government, and I think this is something that maybe the host, we need to work on it, that if you're having this very important conversation like this, it's important if you could be able to find somebody, for example, from the Ministry of Agriculture, maybe the undersecretary, because most of them, they have smartphones. So whether it's not the undersecretary, maybe a director who can be able to give an insight in terms of the ongoing projects and how they can be able to be supported. The issue of land, of course, everywhere in the world, and specifically in the African traditional setting, is one of the most controversial issue. But I'm also aware to the fact that there are some middle-scale farms that have engaged communities, for example, and the communities, they were able to allocate land, and I know for a fact, if government engages different communities on the issues of land, I don't think the communities will be able to not to give in. I can give an example. I think there's an Israelite farm. I don't know whether is it Israel or Ukraine, something like that. I'm not so sure. But there is a farm in Torit, I think operated by either Ukrainians or Russians or Israel, no, or Israelis. But I'm not so sure about the fact. But it could be between the three. But they have a large farm in Torit that they used to operate, and they used to work closely with the military. I perceive the idea is so that the food that they produce, they can be able to provide to the soldiers in a very affordable prices. And I know in Nyieer there used to be, I think there was a large farm in Nyieer for tobacco, for example. I'm also aware that I think in Western Equatoria, specifically Yambio, Zara, Tombora, those areas, there are a lot of NGOs there. Specifically, WAP has been working with them in terms of training the farmers there, in terms of looking at storage, because they do produce, but they don't produce in large scale. And I love the fact somebody talk about tractors. I remember at one point the president bought 100 tractors, and one of the things that we were proposing by then as a society was that you don't need to give these tractors to people who are not farmers, for example. Or the best way of doing it that we have seen it worked in some countries like Kenya, I think, or even Uganda, where you make them in a cooperative society. They come as cooperative societies. They come maybe in 10 or 20s, in groups, and then you give them one tractor. But these tractors end up giving individuals who are not even farmers, and none of those 100 tractors were really used for the purposes that really needed. So we must be able to provide those tractors in a very affordable prices for the farmers, and also be able to train them on the modern way. In fact, even looking at seedlings, for example. I don't know. I understand before they were working on a seed laboratory in Juba, and I think some parts of the country, but I don't know whether that has been developed, because you also need to test the seeds that you bring in so that they fit the soil. So I really do appreciate all this kind of conversation and discussion, and I do agree with the other colleague that I think I think one of the things that we'll be looking forward as we go for election, I don't know when we're going to have election, is to look at political parties having very strong policies and having very strong program on agriculture, how to feed the 9 million people who are going to go hungry, and how to even export. And I do agree lastly with the other person who said hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Brother Wani, we can hear you.
Yeah. So lastly, I was just saying I do agree with the other colleague who said that we should not only look at crop farming alone. I agree with him. For example, we have fish in the greater jungle. I think we have a lot of fish there that we can even export to other countries that need fish. For example, we have very good tilapia, another type of fish that we can be able to really export. We have over 50 million cattle that we can make good use of. That so many things, the skin, so many things. So we have a lot of agricultural products that we can be able to provide market domestically, and we can be able to also export. You can imagine that we have cattle in South Sudan, but we even import cattle. We have goats, for example, in the Toboza area, but we still import goats from Uganda or even Kenya. So it is about empowering our farmers and provide them with the market. This is very, very crucial. We have to empower our farmers, support them, and also again be able to provide market opportunities for them. That's why I do support the idea of somebody saying we need to construct, for example, the road from Juba to Nyieer. From Nyieer, you connect it to Meridi. From Meridi, you connect it to Yambio. From Yambio, you connect it to Lual, for example. Because once you have created that kind of corridor, you're able to get food from Nyieer, and part of the Western Equatoria, and you'll be able to take it to Western Barakazal and be able to get sorghum, for example. I know the people of Warab and some parts there produce a lot of sorghum, for example. So you can be able to get sorghum from Warab to Juba, and and create kind of trade. And this is one way of dealing with also insecurity. Even in a conflict related area, people must eat. Even if there is a war, people must be able to eat. So I really do agree with most of the people who have contributed, and I think some of these ideas we need to trigger it to some of these institutions. As I mentioned earlier, I know the African Development, the World Bank is so much passionate about agriculture, and they could be able to listen to some of these conversations that you have. If you need contacts to World Bank office in South Sudan, I have those contacts. I can be able to share some people that I know who are inside there, and they can maybe participate in some of this discussion and also listen to some of the ideas that are really coming out. You never know, in next year or in months to come, they can be able to put their money and investment to some of these companies, like the one in the United States. And I also wanted to encourage Dr. Lual. I know he has so much hands in some of the institutions of government, and I think it's something we should be thinking about, is that the colleagues, for example, who are in the United States, who are doing an amazing work, they needed to be supported in terms of them doing a lot of advocacy. Recently, I saw Dr. William Ruto, the Kenyan president, went up to the United States, and I saw him meeting a lot of farmers. I think even he went up to I think he went up to Nebraska and met the governor, and I think he met even the farmers there. So it is important that we start building an advocacy team that are also supported to be able to look for potential investors who may not even need to come to really South Sudan, but they can be able to partner, and we should be able to provide those genuine partners from South Sudan, people who will not, money is sent to them and they end up disappearing with the money. So I really appreciate this kind of conversation, and I hope we have more of this in terms of how we are able to boost and bring up this very important sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my brother Wani. And you remember, so don't feel a stranger. Let us get together, have these discussions. Next week we're going to be looking at it should be investment in agriculture and livestock, and the need to develop a rural economy. So something along those lines. I wanted to ask, but before we ask, we'll ask later. Let Carnita come in, but how to trade. How we could trade the hoe and the ox and plow and mini tractors for guns as an incentive for farming. Yeah, go ahead, Carnita. Over to you.
Before Carnita comes in, Carnita, can I just comment so you can incorporate?
James, I forgot, James. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. Kush, are you here? Where's Kush? Kush, you're very quiet. You need to come.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just leaving the experts.
Please go ahead, James.
Yes, thank you, Carnita. I just wanted to address the point that you made earlier when you asked Andrew in terms of investors' attraction. Let us look at it this way, like two environments that are not competing, actually. So the internal environment would be South Sudan, and the external environment, let it be the investors. I don't think it's going to be hard to attract investors. Investors are always there, but we need to put our house in order first, right? And we talked about insecurity earlier. I think we have a lot to offer as a country in terms of food production for local consumption, even for regional and world, for the world. So let's think of it. Somebody's mic is on. John, Mr. John McCoy.
John McCoy, can you mute your mic? Go ahead. Sorry, James. Go ahead.
Yeah. So food insecurity is not a South Sudanese problem. It's not an African problem. It's actually a global issue, right? So as we look forward, by 2030, the population will increase to 9 billion by 2050. This is the projection, and we need step change in agricultural productivity. Look at what happened in Ukraine, right? It affected almost everybody, or a lot of people in Africa. Ukraine is not that big of a country, right? Compared to Africa in general. So the food production, the world food production, needs to increase by 70% by 2050. At current productivity improvement rates, sub-Saharan Africa will only have 1/3 of food it needs, right? So if the food is not enough where we actually import it from, then we'll not even get it from the neighboring countries, right? Because so that makes it very crucial for us to really think and work hard to put our house in order, as I mentioned. Also, productivity will need to increase at all scales, large farmers and small holder farmers. So
yeah, it's very important. Once we put our house in order, I think the investors will always be there, and we need to strengthen our institutions, so that will give us a leg up or advantage to negotiate these kind of deals and get favorable rates when we are working with these financial institutions or investors. So I think we have a lot to offer. In Sudan, like the projects that I was involved in, they produce a lot of fodder, animal feed for Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. They also provide fruits. But once we put our house in order again, the investors will always be there. But we need to be in a strong position where we are negotiating these deals, because if we don't have strong institutions, we will not get favorable deals, including like what Mr. Daniel said. You know, these companies will come and say, hey, we need 51% of the ownership. So basically, when you give 51% ownership to somebody else, it's not yours anymore. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that contribution, James, and for responding back here. Thank you so much. Yeah, this conversation is, as Wani said, is really interesting, and we will continue next week. I think we'll find ways to also expand the other forum. We tried earlier, but there was some cable issues. But we'll definitely try next week to expand onto other forums. Dr. Carnita, over to you. Please come in.
Yeah, James actually just said a lot of where I'm coming from and what my concern is about, and my complete and utter disregard and disinterest in making the Americans look like saints and angels and absolute do-gooders where finances are concerned, and where collaboratives and cooperatives are concerned, and in many cases where NGOs and other types of entities are concerned. History has taught us around the world what they do. I need not go into detail regarding the GMO movement and the more than 200,000 farmers in India who committed suicide because they were not able to repay back the loans that they received. This is 200,000 people in one incident. I'm not talking about one day, but in a very short period of time, committing suicide thanks to the policies and procedures of the GMO. So I agree 100% that South Sudan absolutely must needs have its house in order to stand up against the trappings, the Trojan horses, the loopholes, the games, the double speak, and all of that will come with these types of programs. The Americans have taught us through the centuries that they do not play fair. It just is what it is. It doesn't matter your political affiliation. It doesn't matter where you live, what you eat, how old you are. They don't play fair. It just is what it is. I was born and raised there. I saw the bank redlining. I saw the chain gangs. I saw the housing discrimination, which continues to this day, upwards of about 95%, according to the latest studies, and the list goes on and on and on. You're not going to have that kind of predatory behavior being that rampant, and suddenly they arrive in the land of South Sudan and are going to play completely fair and completely nice. They will take your land if you give them half a chance. So we absolutely have to have our house in order. We need to stick to our guns. We need to be clear about what we're getting into. The second thing I want to ask is this: the more I listen, the more confused I'm beginning to become. So perhaps somebody later on WhatsApp or through a phone call can enlighten me. But I thought by the very definition of the word investor, that there is risk inherent with being an investor. When you look at the US stock market, when you look at NASDAQ, when you look at even the Ghanaian Stock Exchange and other stock exchanges around the world, all of this hedging, to try to make investing almost absolutely risk-free, I'm getting a little bit confused, because inherent in being an investor, it means there is risk associated with it. Of course, I'm not suggesting that somebody should invest in a building that's burning down before their eyes. None of us are suggesting that. But to put all of this energy and effort and to go the 10th and 20th mile to make to leave no stone unturned so that investors will want to invest, it completely negates the whole phenomena of being an investor in the first place, and the fact that there's risk inherent with it and risk associated with it. And the issue becomes more or less risk, but that is what it is. It is the nature of investing. So I'm beginning to get a little bit confused with all of this much speak about trying to attract or make investing attractive, not so much investing attractive in terms of the essential nature, the genius, the excellence, the utility, the sustainability of the project that we want people to invest in, but just investing in general. And so I'm just scratching my head and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, it's beginning to sound that already we are trying to please the Americans because we want to make investing look so incredibly appealing to them, until even the thought of the potential for 51% ownership, we're willing to smile and say, oh, that sounds just lovely. It doesn't sound lovely to me. And I want to go on record for saying that. So thanks, James, for saying what you said. You said a lot. Actually, you said it much more brilliantly than what I'm saying. You said a lot of what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling. But I do want to go on record for saying that we absolutely need to have our house in order, number one. And number two, so far as I understand it, there's almost always inherent risk associated with investing or being an investor. So with that, I'll mute my mic and I'll continue to listen and learn.
Let me respond a minute to Kamita. You're very right. I do not trust Americans. Many of them are predatory capitalism, the CIA. John Kerry betrayed South Sudan, the Obama administration. But however, I would say that this company that we're talking about is not they, but it's you. It's you and American South Sudanese that are forming this company, and can even include people from London, et cetera, within that company. So the 51% ownership of the American company can be 100%, the company can be 100% South Sudanese owned. So you understand that the concept is not to bring in even Valmont Corporation to own these companies. You may want to bring American farmers, Dutch farmers, Canadian farmers, because of their skill, and allow them to invest in such a way that they can gain a return. But the system that you established, like you say, keep your ducks in a row, will permit the South Sudanese people to own these corporations and attract this $100, $200, $400 million. And it's about how you structure it. That's why the Farm Africa paradigm that I'm suggesting, but even other paradigms that are related to this. And I will lay out a strategy paper for your farm group sometime in the next week or so, and include it as a chapter in the book I'm working on, so that you can understand more clearly where I'm coming from. There are many bad Americans, but there are also many good Americans, good Christian people that want to solve problems and work together, and they're not interested just in their pocketbook, but they're interested in transformation by working together in a collaborative way with people. So I hope that answers your question a little bit, but the company can be totally South Sudanese owned, but it's within the American company to secure these the financial resources.
Thank you, Daniel, yeah, and thank you, Carnita. Carnita's right. Obviously, we're not naive to believe that the world is a fair place. But at times when you think of South Sudan, we need know-how. We need investment. At times and in most societies, you're going to lose out, because until you build a conducive environment where people are comfortable to just walk in and invest, there will be gives and takes. So I don't think any of us are willing to sell our land and we would hope our government would not just sell land for the sake of it. Again, as I mentioned to you earlier, many South Sudanese are bored, and by being exposed or being part of the diasporic community, we should have our people's interests at heart. So whoever we bring should obviously be, there should be proper due diligence done, but there must be emphasis that we're not naive, and we must make sure to protect the rights of our people and the land in particular. So your points are very valid, Carnita, and we share your sentiment. And thank you, Daniel, as well, for the assurance. But always, one thing we've observed, any investor is always told to look after the interests of the home country. And times things can be determined or altered or influenced otherwise. But nevertheless, not every humanity is bad, and we must always. But again, it's about alert. Nobody is about everybody's interest. It's not just your interest. So you must protect your own interest. So from our terms of engagement should also determine how we should position these kind of investment. And I think you're right to say 51 should go to South Sudanese and 49 to the would-be investors. But again, as Daniel said, it could be South Sudanese working Americans or South Sudanese Americans as well. I'm also delighted to have the presence of presidential candidate Paul with us. Paul Manyog is here with us, so we'll give him a chance shortly. I wanted to give one a chance.
Nyieer.
Yes, James.
Yeah.
Yes, James.
One last quick point. Yeah.
Yes,
thank you, Carnita and Daniel, for your contribution or interaction. Actually, interjection, rather. You made a very interesting point, Daniel. I'm a big fan of strategy and execution, right? When it comes to project management and stuff like that. Regarding Valmont, Valmont is not an investor. It doesn't even have a bank. It doesn't provide money. It doesn't do all these things. What Valmont does, as you know very well, and I just want our listeners to know that too, is that it's a technology provider, irrigation technology provider. So what it does, it provides, because it has to sell its machines, which are known to be the best in the market. It also helps in capacity building and aftermarket support, because when you succeed, Valmont succeeds. And we want you to buy these machines, and we need you to be trained and build. Speaking of capacity building, so I think that was a very important point. Once you buy these machines, they are yours. So you're going to own them for the next 25 to 30 years, and it needs a lot of training and capacity building to reap the labor of your fruits when it comes to agricultural productivity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, James. We appreciate that point. I think we'll go over to Monon, and then we will probably start to round up shortly. Monon, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Justin. I just start with the comment of Dr. Carnita. I think she made a very valuable point. And I think the investor arc in South Sudan, I don't know if they have the one that is update, but the way they put it in, I think it may need some revise to be reviewed, because I think they put a 39 vice 6-1s, which is actually giving the investors 6-1s and giving the South Sudanese 39%, which is actually with the comment that you make is very important. So Sudanese should have at least 51% and an investor 49%. But also it depends for what James put early, that our country, we are not poor country. We are a rich country in terms of minerals and that we have in the country and on oils. But the mismanagement of resources in the country and the weak institution in the country, if there's not the weak institution in the country, I think we will need a partner investors just for us to build a capacity building. Because as a new nation, we don't have a skill and we don't have expertise that can be able to develop the huge projects. And that's why we need advanced nation or partnership with companies that actually can build our capacity for period of agreement of time, gradually hand over the company to the South Sudanese when they are able now to manage their own affair alone for a couple of years. And that's where the partnership came to play a role. The project of 400 million South Sudanese can come in and put 51% immediately and allow South Sudanese to sell it in the end to the South Sudanese to buy it. So that way the project will have efficiency management and out of corruptions. And the government here is making wealth, and South Sudanese also are making wealth for sustainability and success of projects. I think those type of ideas, we need to discuss them also with the Lual when he had enough time, then give him a whole presentation and prepare ourselves to ask him with a question, those type of questions, because he's a member of economic cluster that is headed by Dr. Waniga, the vice president. And I think they have a lot to offer. And I agree also with Wani that cluster, economic cluster, we may need some of them who can be able to attend those type of meetings that we're doing here in South Sudan People Charter is very important. And also some ministries, line ministries that can be able to attend those meetings, even under secretary, is very important. Here, my input is a question that was asked about insensitive. I think insensitive is very important for or guarantee for investors. As Justin suggested, that we have minerals, and those minerals, we just need a proper way of using technology to make studies. Even though we don't have them yet or explore them yet, we can make scans technology to ensure the reserve that we have on the ground of gold or minerals whatsoever, or diamond, or those things alone can be a form of guarantee for when it comes to the risk assessment for those who are fearing to bring their investment in due to the security in the country. I think those things can be done. The other thing also is the land also. Land, I think our community across the South Sudan, even though people are talking about land issue in South Sudan, community are ready to welcome any partnership with the government or any investors that are coming in. Community is there. The most important thing is how to regulate it to ensure that you're protecting the land, but at the same time, the investor also are feeling comfortable by being invested and could be insensitive also of attracting agriculture investors. A few years can be waived from the lease, from lease for a few years, exemption from lease to attract them to come in. At the same time, the tax also, even in America here, in advanced country, they're still using tax exemption for the short period of time to attract the companies or manufacturers, investors. Even in America here, they do that. So those type of sensitive can be offered, because in the end of the day, what we need is a food on the table for our people. And we have to learn from Singapore in the early 50s. What they done in Singapore is they ignored the environment from the beginning, because the priority was not about environment. The priority was to put the food on the tables. And they did it. They invited many companies to create a job for their people. So at least the food will be on the table. And later on also they have to focus on the roof. For every Singapore to have a roof, a house built for them. But now what happened in the end? After progress, after the growth, Singapore now is number one when it comes to environment, the cleanest nation in the world. Why? Because they did it in a smart way, because they focus on education, educating their peoples and put the food on the table for their people, develop the roof for their people. And now they went back and investing in technology, where now they have a clean technology investment where they don't have environmental issue anymore, and they have to clean up all the mess in the end. So I think there are ways that we can actually, learn from other best practice from other countries, and we can use them. The issue that we have is the institution capability in the country, and that will be resolved only through elections, where we have to do some sort of election and practice where we can have cadres of South Sudanese who are capable come to the power or running those institutions in the way that they can be able to speak the language that investor would understand, but at the same time also they are protecting and they are investing in what is needed at current wall. Because the Torjon, they said early that we have to start when the wall is start. But I think the rest of comrades that are left behind, they forget what the Torjon said. He said, so Sudan should start from where the wall is, which is mean we have to start with investing with the new technologies and all these things. And we have capability to do that. We have diaspora, who can actually be encouraged to go back home and investing in those type of businesses. So this is what I need to add, and I thank everyone's contribution, and I really appreciate also input of Dr. Cornita. I really appreciate your input, and I think you need to help. You need to develop some proposal before we talk to Dr. Lual, because what I seen is wrong. 61%, vice 49%. They need to fix this one. They need to put it 51% and 49% for foreigners investors. This is very important, and the government have to cover because we have money. I think we have no excuses. All these excuses, are not true. There's money that can be injected into partnership of those investors by our government, and later on they can open to sell it to the public so South Sudanese can buy it. Because I believe government cannot do the business. That's what I believe. But government can partner with businesses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manon. Brother Kush, I'm going to let you come in. Also, Mr. Paul Maniok to come in and say a few words. So I think I had asked a question earlier, and I wanted John McCoy and anybody else to tell us, how can agriculture be used as a tool for peace? For instance, I mentioned earlier, can oil be traded for peace? Can oxen plow be traded for guns? Can we get guns to replace? Can we get these things to replace the guns? And if for instance, in the case of lakes now, the government has created a conducive environment for peace. But people are probably stacking away their guns. But can they permanently be told, hand over your guns? Because collecting guns and ammunition has been a big challenge. It seems like we collect them, then another group who still have arms will exploit the situation, attack and raid neighboring communities. The neighboring communities will now go back and buy arms, and so the cycle continues. So how can agriculture, and let's say if there was a way of incentivizing agriculture to remove guns, how can that be done? John, over to you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Here in Lagos State, we had applied two approaches to development and especially to handling the conflicting communities at the state level here. The first approach was only the negative peace approach. The negative peace approach here, what I mean is that there is silence of gunshots. Conflicting communities were brought into forum to reconcile and also to forgive each other and to live peacefully. The second one, which we are embarking on, and which this forum serves to flourish at local government level, is to intervene in positive peace. Positive peace here is about developmental activities. People embarked on projects that enhance social cohesion and also to live together and to work together. Agriculture here on plays a very critical role in reconciling or in bringing about peace in the communities, in terms of engaging their minds to productive activities, can actually improve the lifestyle as well as social coexistence, because you will not have time to activities that are crime by nature and also activities that are abnormal or avoided by the law of the state. Your mind will be only busy on how you can cultivate your farm and also how you can improve the lifestyle, how you can develop your children and also yourself. This is a very clean wealth that you can acquire by using your own hands and also by your own sweat. It can also improve corruption, because agriculture, if you have food, our problem here in South Sudan is food insecurity. If the issue of the food insecurity is rendered, then there will be no crisis. The reason why there is high corruption in the offices is also to meet the demands in the market. The market is boiling, as everybody knows that South Sudan is hit by financial crisis. The prices are skyrocketing, hyperinflation. The little the government does cannot improve, cannot bring down the prices, which are boiling in the market. So agriculture is actually the only untapped opportunity that South Sudanese would yield now to embark on, and also by soliciting some financial and technical support from the international partners at the international level. People like you can also impart technical knowledge to our farmers. Not everyone is interested in agriculture, but the few who are actually investing in agriculture can be encouraged to farm very well, or in a technical way provided by the international expertise. So even if our farmers are busy day and night trying to cultivate, their work may be in vain. And that is because of the knowledge gap. The knowledge our farmers have is very little compared to the international opportunities, international level. Another one is that here in South Sudan, some people are encouraged by climatic conditions. Sometimes you can be working so hard, and maybe in that particular year, the rainfall is very, very, very little. Your crops do not germinate, and you don't have any other alternative source to supplement your income level. So another part is that apart from the climatic condition, people are not well versed with some of the seeds. Our seeds are long-term seeds. They take long time to yield. They take 1 year. We need to also advise our farmers to shift away from long-term varieties to short-term varieties. So this is all that I can say to this forum. And my background, of course, I'm not an agriculturalist, but the little I know, I can share it for the benefit of this forum. Otherwise, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. Economics and agriculture go side by side. They travel well. But thank you so much. So, Mr. Paul, Kush, over to you, and then into Kush, over to you.
Yes. Good morning. Good afternoon. Thank you all for attending this. I think John, your mic is okay. Thank you. Thank you for discussing these critical issues. Agriculture, our people are really suffering right now because of this food insecurity, and a lot of this is because of some of the get quick rich mentality that's been fueled by the oil. The blessing of the oil have given us the curse of agriculture, to invest in agriculture. Because to be able to be a farmer, you do need to have patience. You do need to have like a really high, very high work ethics, that you have to have a perfectionist. You can't just drop the seed and just come back in 3 months and think that it's gonna, no, you have to, you have to take out the weeds. You have to go there from morning to sun. It really require a lot of hard work ethics and commitment, unlike the culture that has been going on in South Sudan, when people just want to get rich as soon as possible, from looting the government coffers and taking something that does not belong to them in a minute. So really, this is just kind of require a paradigm shift to have this kind of a gradual improvements, work ethics, perseverance, hard works. So this is very, very critical, as we know that the farmer's mentality, the farmer nature worldwide is different than a pastoral, than a cattle herder, which is tend to be more aggressive and you could fill up the blank. So for us to really to turn to this to become agricultural, it's require a lot of training and skills and trying to change from this warrior cattle herders mentality to an agricultural, somebody who could be able to work slowly and hard every day, sweat, blood, and tears. So it does. So for us, really, we've been, the country and a lot of us been having this, in order for us to develop in agriculture, we do need investments. And that's true. But these things, we shouldn't be stopping there. We shouldn't just be stopping that. We're putting all our eggs under the mercy of an investors. So if I ask you questions, if I could give you to invest in agriculture today at $3 million right now in cash, or I give you 1 penny, 1 US penny, and that penny will double every day for 31 days. What would you choose? The $3 million right now, or the penny doubling every day for 31 days?
I would choose the penny.
The penny. A lot of people will choose the $3 million. Why? The penny will double. Today is 1 cent, tomorrow is 2, the day after is 4 cents. By the end of the 31 days, it will be $10 million. That single penny doubling every day is exactly, to be exact, at the 30 days is 5,368,709 and 0.12 cents. By the 31 days is 10 million. And if you just keep going on, it will mind-boggling. So what I'm trying to get into it, we could wait to get that big bang right away from the investors, or we could start with the penny mentality, meaning all of us here in the charters. And I appreciate Brother Manon that said he's developing 65 acres. This is wonderful. We have a lady called Joyce that I talked about it last week. She developed 19 acres. Very successful. 19 acres. That lady have more chance to take her portfolio and walk into any investor and say, hey, this is what I did. Look at my books. Look what I did. There is video. There is all this. She could get investment immediately. Manon had 65 acres. So if we, as for us, it was that concept of, okay, yes, we could rely on investments. They may come, the investment might look, there is a war, there is insecurity, there is corruptions, and I need to secure my investors. Who will not, if I'm putting in a money to invest, I want that money to, the first rule of investment is to protect, not to lose the money. So, and the second rule and the third rule is the same thing, as that's Warren Buffett will say, that protect the assets. So for us really to take the penny mentality, if we could be able to really, ask fear and the people in the people charters, how easily can we be able to get 100 people to pledge $100 every month and just start with 100 acres? 100 acres. If Manon can do 65, all of us combined, let's just say we just want to do 100 this year. Next year, we'll double that to 200. The year after, 400. By the year 9, we will get into 600 acres that James had proposed into 5 to 7 years. So really, for us, really, people are hungry and people are starving, and the country may fall into collapse. And it's really for us to have this alternative, the investment routes with sophistications and all those things. And it's for us to take in our affair in our hands and have another wings of getting people into do these things to practice what we preach. I always, when I'm talking to our people in the charters, I always want to for us to not just limit ourselves to only talking theories or writing things, but to actually to try to do. If we're talking about education, okay, let's try to build a school. If we're doing agriculture, let's try to do agriculture. If we want to talk about urban planning and development, real estate, okay, let's do something there. I previously mentioned to a few of you that there is a group that I started with a few individuals that we pledge to $500 every month, and we were very successful. That we want to do a business, and the mistake that we have not identified what business we're going to. We just said we're going to do a business, and we are not the specifics. So by the time when we collect the money, it's become like, okay, well, let's do this, and people were trying to do like export imports and do some of the big moves right away, rather than trying to do something that would be having a tangible. And I have to withdraw, learning that we should have been anything that you want to do, you want it to be specific. This is what you do, and this is what we're putting in, and this is what should be like being a clear, specific, which is the smart method, clear, specific, measurable. So I just wanted to really like people like Manon and James and a lot of us people in the charters. We need to lead by examples, and we could be able to finish these charters and draft a very beautiful and scientific documents, and we putting it in the hand of the governments. It will be shelved like any other documents that have been done. So it's really for us really to be able to like we think about the projects or something that the country needs. Let's develop the expertise, people who have already have boots on the ground, and let's build something around them. By the first year, by the second year, you could be able to you develop 100 acres. When you go to investment next year, it's guaranteed that you are not guaranteed, but you will have more the likelihood of getting investment or to a bigger to go bigger. It would be much better than sweet presentations. So really appreciate a lot of you. All of you, and let's be practical and do some things this year. Thank you.
Activism, oh yeah. No, we definitely need to put our boots on and get on the ground. It's just how we do it sometimes. But I think, as you said, if we're to learn from previous experience, it's just, again, we risk people not knowing how to work together. But I think we have worked together very well, and definitely we could see how people can come together, and everybody brings a component of what's necessary. But again, as you said, the experience teaches us that we must know what we want to do and to prioritize those. People like Monon can definitely teach us how they did it, and where they also had difficulties. Because again, sometimes even trusting people that you perceive to be your relatives becomes a problem, because they're desperate. They're into the 3 million as opposed to the 1 cent that doubled regularly. So short-termism is a big problem, and how we can handle the here and now. I sometimes think it can be done two ways. We must solve our own realities locally, wherever we are. For instance, if we can solve our own realities, that frees us up. And when it frees us up, obviously we work together to free even more people up. And then this is the only way we can implement what we want. But if there's going to be difficulties, and again, we know some time back, there was lots of money coming out of South Sudan, but now lots of remittances are going back. I've often said that remittances that go in should be a bargaining chip for people in the diaspora, really, to say, this is how much we contribute. I don't know, India and others really are, Nigeria, they're very much at the top. It'd be very interesting to know, and maybe we'll have a discussion one of the days, to know how much really goes back in to South Sudan, and if there was a way that diaspora can organize primarily around its remittances, but also its role as a potential development partner, then we could actually be on this, and we can be on the sitting table of would-be development partners for the government. And then the government needs to also acknowledge that, like the Kenyan diaspora is doing today, they're doing a lot of work, but even they're not using the contributions as a source of leverage. And I would really like to see that happen at some stage. Then in that sense, it could be a wider strategy that could probably create a bigger impact. Again, if there are incentives for many of us, if we go home to maybe that we're exempted from tax, then we could use that, a lot of that money for investment, and also to be strong as we land. And so we have a lot to learn from the Manons and others. Yeah. Over to, thank you, Kush. Over to Mr. our presidential candidate, Paul. Over to you, sir. The mic is yours. And we would like to conclude in the next 10 minutes, but we'd like to hear your thoughts on this discussion. We want to thank you also for introducing Mr. Daniel, who has really electrified our discussion and sees the benefits of diaspora relations with back home, but also good global citizens who could also have a heart and a feel for South Sudan and its people there. Thank you. Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Nyieer Gordon, for putting this meeting together. And I came and I heard our sister Ganada. It has been a minute. How are you, Dr. Ganada? Are you still there?
I am. It's good to hear your voice. How are you, my dear?
A long time. And yes, I came when quite a few have spoken, and I also heard our brother John from Lake State. I'm glad to hear your presentation. He said something that I'm not a farmer, but yes, we are farmer by default. We were raised, we grow up being raised, feeding from what we cultivate and stuff like that. So farming has been something ingrained in our DNA. So yes, I don't know, when I came in, there were like 13 people. If you won't mind to refresh my memory with the statistic of people whom are there, that would be great. Thank you.
No, currently there's 12. Earlier, I think at the extreme, we had 19. We're trying to expand the forum to cover Facebook as well as Twitter to begin with, but then there's a device we need to get to connect to Clubhouse. So we'll be back on Clubhouse within the next 2 to 3 weeks, and on the other forums as well. But as we have been progressing, we're talking to everybody, and again, we're non-partisan initiative. We want to prioritize the country and the people, and we will talk to anybody, because we must have these discussions and hopefully gain consensus and a sense of addressing issues of the need for critical mass that believes in this way as opposed to the various ways and the various challenges. But again, we as a society has been damaged or warped through what we've been through, but we can surely recover because we have the resilience, and it runs in our blood. And there's a lot that needs to be doing, but that sense of urgency, which was there, even you, Mr. Paul, were a liberator. You know, we've lost that zeal, and we must recuperate and rekindle that whole zeal for our people and country. with the view of also forgiving one another, as others have said, and turning the other cheek for the sake of the common purpose and long-term survival of our people and prosperity for that matter. So thank you for joining us today. That the statistics doesn't matter too much. If we've managed to convert a heart today, somebody got excited, next time he'll bring 2 or 3, or she'll bring 2 and 3 or 4. But the conversations will continue. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nyieer Gordon. For some of you who don't know Nyieer Gordon, he's son of Gordon Muortat, and he's the man who raised South Sudan flag, the Nile country. I'm not sure whether I'm quoting it correctly.
The Nile Republic.
Yes.
Nile Republic. Yeah, it's a country. It was a country.
Yes.
It was.
Yes, the Nile Republic. So he has been raised by a man who has the country in his heart. And when he sees people coming together, he give up what he stood for the benefit of uniting our people. There is something that was said in one of the South Sudanese language that there is a animal called a bok in Nile. It has something white on its neck, and when it gives birth to the young one, it doesn't leave that color. It always has that color. The same thing that I could sense in the voice of Nyieer Gordon. He has that patriotism that was instilled into him by his father, and I'm really proud of you. And Dan Cruz, thank you for giving your valuable time and your heart to help South Sudanese. Dan and I have traveled quite a bit. We went all the way to John Deere headquarters and also to touching base with American farmers. And of course, not just American farmers that are American, but also South Sudanese American. And so the focus is to help the nation. And Brother Manon have been very consistent. And at one point when we were at our political forum, I saw Manon and I said, this man is being underutilized. It wasn't like to create a discord or anything like that, but it's to acknowledge his services and what he does for the nation. Manon, thank you for what you do. I'm proud of you. Keep doing what you are doing. I heard the name Lual. I don't know. It wasn't complete. Is that Dr. Lual Acuek or which Lual? Because there are many Lual, and Lual is like a common name in South Sudan. And I heard a suggestion.
It was Dr. Our eminent personality, Lual Acuek. Yeah, he was the one. Yeah, he'll be back hopefully if we can persuade him to come back. There was a bit of a delay, so and he was traveling, but he was so kind enough to give us his time. But as others have appealed, we will also appeal to him to try and come back, at least for full session. Give him a full session of his own, just to tell us what's happening in the culture in general and the general government policy towards using this as a tool for recovery as well as stability. Yeah, go ahead.
That's great. Yes, he has been in this, and of course in the development for extended period of time, and he knows what he's doing. And if he's not being underutilized, he can think big for the nation. So I met him a few times, and he's a great man. I actually met one of his colleagues from WOW. His name is Suleiman, who was in Liberia for 20 years. He has been with some of your fathers in the school and all of that. I met him at the funeral of our Nubian brother, Ismail, who was promoted to glory, who God called to his kingdom. And we went, and it's amazing how many people came from all over the world to put him to rest. Ismail Kadu Kuku, he he preached the word in the U.S., Australia, South Sudan, Egypt, and all. So he knows what he does, and it was amazing seeing a lot of people there, including the men that have Solomon, whom have been, with Dr. Lual for an extended period of time in the economic sector and all. I will not talk much because y'all are ending the session. My focus is to unite the political parties to have that umbrella where the leaders discuss. I'm one of the 9 presidential candidates, and I create a room, a forum, where all these presidential candidates have to come together and have a dialogue. And so with that, I want to encourage you, to participate, because the focus is to make a difference in the nation. A nation that is believed to be the place where all the human DNA came from, South Sudan. So I will not talk much, but thanks for the invitation. I will continue to delegate some more people to come. There are people that I have delegated whom are interested in this area. The work of a leader is to identify people that could make a difference, because as a leader, you cannot do it alone. You are not a sole conduit, and there's no person or country that is an island. So the work that Dan is doing, we took us all the way to John Deere, capital of the world, is to make a difference in South Sudan. And of course, we have many South Sudanese whom are American, South Sudanese, Australian, South Sudanese, British citizen, and the list continue. We have people from all over the world. And if we find a leader that is going to bring this knowledge of, the talented people, those who will not discriminate based on where one comes from, but focus on making a difference in the country, then South Sudan will be a better place for all of us. Call me when you get a chance later. I'm scheduled in 3 different places. I have to go to the Supreme Court. My daughter is presenting there as one of the Supreme lawyers. And I had to attend one of the funeral, and then I'm expected to be somewhere where Panan Duop, the singer that says about Gorka Dial Kamje. He's singing, and I'm invited to that. And then I'm also invited to speak somewhere in Dallas, Texas. So all these need a personal jet, which I don't have yet. But with God, all things are possible. Everything, all the cattle on the planet belong to God. And so we happen to be a custodian of what we have at the moment. I will not talk much, but yield the rest of the time to the invited guests. And of course, when you delegate people to do work, then there's no need to also take time and speak. But send me the recording of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Honorable Paul Manyok. It's always a delight to have you. We miss having you on Clubhouse. We haven't been there for a while, but we will be coming back soon. I think you're a brave soul who has a vision, who wants to unite his people, who wants to see the best in all of us. But the road is turbulent. Politics is not for the faint-hearted. But I think you have the resilience to continue, learn from the humbleness that is within our genes as a people, and build a team around you. And we could see you're doing that, the likes of Mr. Daniel here. So thank you for all your effort. Also, John, the other gentleman who studies in Uganda, John also joined us earlier. So we appreciate all your input, and good luck with the presidential. I don't know whether the elections will happen, but if it does happen, do your best. I may be there physically. If I'm there, you'll have my vote, because it's important that we have ideologically convicted individuals as opposed to everything else. You know, we want people who could tell us what they want and what aligns to what the people want. And I think you're doing well. Keep build that political party and hopefully be one of the biggest and maybe effective parties in days to come. Thank you. And thank you for the encouragement as well. We really appreciate. Carnita, we want you to end the session today with a question, something that resonates with the discussion, but something that leaves us on a positive note as we meet again next week. We will also next Sunday have a lecture, so we will decide who and so we'll have 2 sessions next week. Next week we'll be looking at investment in agriculture, livestock and crop, but then developing a rural economy as the end result, because we need a rural community where 70% of our population is still in the rural community. So they definitely need a vibrant economy which centers around what they have. They have their land and they have their livestock. And so they've got to be encouraged and supported. Over to you, Carnita, as a member of the Charter. You can end the session.
Thank you so much, Nyieer. I wasn't expecting this request from you, so
I know you can do it.
I almost choked on my cranberry juice.
That's a sign of inspiration there.
But again, the work that we have embarked on, it's indeed an essential work. It is a necessary work. We owe no one an explanation, and we have nothing to apologize for. Years ago, when I first got onto Clubhouse and I started joining many of the different Clubhouse platforms, the South Sudanese, the Somali, the Igbo, the Yoruba, the Kenyan, the Ghanaian, and even a couple of few African-American groups. One of the things that became abundantly clear to me as I continue to be a student of history is the fact that we here are melanated marvels. And this is not about being egotistical or having a supremacist ideology. It's about honoring and valuing our epigenetics. Indeed, South Sudan is rich, and we should govern ourselves accordingly. We are more so recovering our identity and our excellence and our productivity and our penchant for excellence and governance than we are learning and adopting. We're more so in a work of recovery and reinstituting and reconstituting ourselves than we are at the mercy and behest as wards of the state, if you will, where the international landscape is concerned. So as we go forward, let's go forward with that in mind, that we have a lot to stand on. We have an extraordinary history. We have extraordinary ancestors, men and women of great renown in all areas. Even the word chemistry is derived from the word chemet. We have many things that we have brought to humanity, and we have many more things to bring. And so as we go forth and fashion collaborations, as we go forth and engage and indulge in innovations and all things sustainable and all things empowering, let's remember who we are. Let's honor and celebrate who we are. And let us stand on the shoulder of our ancestors. Ashe, Asheo.
Ashe.
Hey.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is interesting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Amen.
Thank you,
Amen.
Dr. Carnita.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Carnita. That was inspirational. So everybody have a delightful weekend, and let's meet again next Saturday. And please bring a friend.
Thank you all.
Bring a few friends.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ida. All the best. Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
Thank
Daniel.
you.
Thank you, Engineer
Thank you,
Magai.
everybody.
Take care. Thank you, Kush. Thank you, James. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.